Hi there and welcome Disability Law Show. So good to have you with us this week. I'm John Scholes and joining me again, James Fireman, Sivan Tumarkin from Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. Just happen to be the most positively reviewed law firm in the country. You can check that out anytime. You can also reach the fellas and their teams anytime by making that phone call, 1-855-821-5900, or if you prefer an email, that is help@disabilityrights.ca. More contact information throughout the show over the next half hour, plus our main topic in just a bit, guys, what you need to know about mental illnesses and LTD. That is on the way, but we start every show with the week that was. Going to tell us something. James, what do you got, pal?
Well, what I want to talk about is frustration.
Okay.
It is a very common theme in people that contact our firm, especially when they're dealing with insurance companies. Shocking, I know. What we find so often is people who are legitimately disabled, their doctors are telling them that they cannot go back to work. The insurance company has all of the information. It is clear, it is on point. They know they can't work, they have the medical support, and yet the insurance company still says, no, you're not disabled, you can go back to work. It happens all the time, and people are thinking, okay, well, it must be that they don't understand. They don't have all of the information. So I'm going to get my doctor to write a letter that summarizes everything and provides these additional medical records that they don't have. And they do that, and the insurance company still denies their claim. And they become more and more frustrated because they think it's a question of logic. It's a question of making sure the insurer has all of the information. But what I think most people tend not to appreciate is, for insurance companies, they are looking for the quickest path to deny your claim. It's got nothing to do with logic, and it's got very little to do with information. Once they go down that road, it's almost as though they're on autopilot. Like, it's going to happen, they're going through the paces, and it's just a matter of making sure that they can check a couple of boxes so that they can at least superficially justify the denial. Let me give you an example of that. So I have a client whose case I'm dealing with right now, and we're getting close to resolution. But this is someone who has such chronic fatigue, he's sleeping 12 to 16 hours a day. He's got 4 or 5 different underlying conditions that are contributing to this, but no one seems to really quite understand exactly what's going on. And his insurance company actually paid him for the first 2 years during the own occupation period, but then decided that he was okay to return to work. No improvement in his condition. They just decided that he was capable of working in another occupation. After the first 2 years, then if the insurance company can find another occupation that you're qualified for, that will pay you a commensurate wage, then they can say that you're no longer entitled to benefits. That's under the policy, but it doesn't make any sense. If you're sleeping 12 to 16 hours a day and you're suffering from extreme fatigue, you're not going to be able to do, there's no job you're going to be able to do, you just can't. And so he hired me to represent him, and we got the insurance file. And what this insurance company did, the first thing they did is they did a functional capacity evaluation where they run him through a battery of tests. This was one day, over 4 hours. And what the assessors determined is that at most he can work a 4-hour day. Now that conclusion on its own is highly questionable, because within that report they acknowledged that towards the end of this 4-hour session he significantly deteriorated. His ability to do any of the tasks required of him went down sharply towards the end of that 4-hour day. They never followed up with him, by the way, and for 3 or 4 days afterwards his symptoms were significantly worse. But nonetheless, they say he can work at most a 4-hour day. Then they have a medical consultant review the file, and the medical consultant says he is only able to do highly structured tasks where he's not required to do anything that requires significant cognitive function or rapid thinking. Okay, so what this insurance company has done, they've basically made my client's case for him. At most 4 hours a day, but probably a lot less, and it has to be really simple tasks. There is no employment situation where you're going to be able to find something that's going to pay him a commensurate income. Nothing even close. The reality is it's obvious that he can't work. So what did they do? They do a transferable skills analysis. They ignore their doctor's medical opinion, and they assume he can work an 8-hour day for 5 days a week, week after week. They've ignored their own information in order to generate a conclusion that they were going towards all along. And so if you wonder why people are frustrated with the process, that's why. And I think it's a lot simpler to just understand that once the insurer starts going down that road, once they start spending money in order to try and get information to justify the decision, they're going to get there. They're going to get there. That doesn't mean that they're remotely correct or that it would ever hold up in court, but they're going to go there. And rather than getting frustrated, call us. Call us. The sooner you call us, the quicker we're going to be able to get you to a resolution. Simple as that.
Here's the question, Sivan. How many people give up at that point?
Many.
Right.
Insurance companies play the odds. They understand most people will get frustrated, or that they'll be paralyzed by fear, or that they get misinformation by Googling information that's inaccurate or listening to people who will tell them, don't even bother. Insurance companies are banking on it. I can't even calculate how much money is kept in the insurance company's coffers that is owed to people who are disabled. You know, when we first started the show years and years ago, I think I even told you, John, that I got emails from people who had applied and were denied disability decades ago, and they were still off work. And when I talked to them and I did the math in my head, some of these claims were worth really close to or even more than $1 million.
Wow.
I mean, that's money that was owed to them that insurance companies kept. The problem is that too much time has elapsed, right? You can't wait forever. You can't. There is a 2-year limitation period from the date of your first denial. There are some exceptions here and there, but you don't want to be in that boat. So that's why we tell people, get in touch with us. You get a denial, get in touch with us. You have a question, get in touch with us. It costs nothing to get this information. It's accurate. It's coming from a legal team. We know what we're doing. Insurance companies know that we know what we're doing. And they also know that once we start a legal claim for a client, because of our reputation, expertise, and resources, they come to the table to try and resolve these claims. It costs them way too much money to fight them.
There's a app, well, it's a website actually called pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. We also host the Employment Law Show here with your partner, Lior. We use it all the time, but there's also a section purposely built into this thing on disability law. Describe it.
So that's for those people, John, that don't want to call us or don't want to email us, don't want to get in touch with us because they just want to get the answers on their own. So I'll tell you this, instead of going to Google and trying to find those answers and being redirected to American websites or websites from other provinces or lawyers who who just dabble in this area, go to the Pocket Employment website. It doesn't just deal with employment matters. It will give you answers, specific answers to your specific questions if you're having a long-term disability issue with your insurance company. It's anonymous, it's quick, it's accurate, and it's free. And if at the end you get an answer and you'd like to follow up on that, get in touch with us, click the button to follow up. Otherwise, close the browser. We won't know that you were there, but at least you have somewhere to go to if you don't want to contact us. But of course, always better to just get in touch with us because then we can speak with you confidentially about your specific situation, fact scenario, review some documents for you, again, all for free, to make sure that you are empowered and you have the information you need to know what your next steps are.
On top of this TV show we've been doing for years, as Sivan mentioned, we do a ton of radio pretty much across the country. Myself and James and Sivan, other members of the team. You want to find a radio station near you that carries our program. It's an hour long generally. disabilityrights.ca. At the top banner, you see Knowledge Center. Click down, Media. You'll find a station near you that carries. And actually, you can phone the shows during the time that they're on. Contribute. Ask some questions. Sometimes your call may appear on this show. We're going to get to our first phone call from one of our radio shows right now.
I was involved in a pretty serious accident sitting at a red light, and some woman drove into me at 60 kilometers. The damage, of course, wasn't visible. I was faced with an insurance company that made me fight to get short-term, long-term, forced me back to work. In their mind, the severity of my accident required me to be off less than 12 days.
Less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, a bit difficult to hear this, John, but people after accidents, they're often faced not just with the results of the accident, the injuries, but they're facing now insurance companies who again are there. I mean, it's almost like it's one of those things where it's the only product you purchase. Insurance, or your employers will purchase that as part of your group benefits plan, where they get premiums, they get paid for this coverage, only to later on have an incentive to deny that coverage. I don't know that there's any other product out there where someone's getting money only to later on say, we're not giving you what you paid for. And this lady, I mean, it's very unfortunate. Short-term, long-term disability, both of these types of disability coverages, we see denials all the time. I think that one of the worst things that people can do to themselves is feel that they have no power, and they feel that there's no one there to help them. And that's just not true. Now, when it comes to this lady here, look, after an accident, you're going to go to your doctors, you're going to go to the hospital, you're going to go to a clinic, there's going to be a medical trail. And at the end of the day, if you are unable to go back to work for a certain period of time, it could be that it's 6 months, it's a year, it's into the foreseeable future or unforeseeable future, who knows for how long. As long as you have doctors and people around you who are treating you, who are saying you are disabled from working, you should get this coverage, you should get these payments. And if you don't, that's where we come in. It's really simple. Don't make it overly complicated. Don't worry about, you're not paying us anything up front. At the end of the day, if we can't help you, we're not going to charge you anything for it. So really, it's in our interest to help you, because we only get paid at the end if we can force the insurance company to pay you what you're owed. So I feel really bad for this lady, but I think that we can help her, and we will help her.
I was going to add, the other thing I note from this caller is she was injured in a serious accident. I think it was a car accident.
Yep.
And that being the case, it's even more critical to give us a call. We can certainly help out, not just on the disability end, but if there is a claim to be had from the car accident, there's somebody else at fault, we can certainly get involved in Ontario and Alberta. And even if there's not someone else at fault, if your own insurance company, I think pretty much across the board nationally, is going to be on the hook to pay accident benefits if you're involved in a car accident. It can be very complicated to work out how that interacts with disability benefits. But the good news is we've got a lot of experience dealing with that in all jurisdictions. So if you've been injured either in a car accident or otherwise and you have disability insurance, it's pivotal that you give us a call early on so we can make sure that we're going to maximize the amount of money that you're going to get and that we can ensure you're getting that as soon as possible.
Last point I wanted to mention in addition to this about this caller, she mentioned something that we hear quite often, which is, I was forced back to work. Yep. Now, no one is going to come to your home, John, and put a gun to your head and say, you have to go. What she means, which is what most people mean, is they told me they're not paying me or they're not going to pay me if I don't try to go back to work, so I have no choice. That's not true. It's not true. Your choice is to follow your doctor's advice. And if your doctors are saying you need time off, take the time off. Let us deal with the insurance company. But when people are saying I have no choice because they have to put food on the table, right? They have to pay for stuff. You have a mortgage, you have rent, whatever it is. There are government disability programs that you can access as well, right? One of the websites that we often mention, John, is LTD frequently asked questions.ca. And on that website, we have different memos, different short memos that provide information. One of them is about the different government programs available for people to access in Ontario, Alberta, and BC. So again, you cannot be forced to go back to work. You should not be pressured to go back to work. You should speak with your doctor, and if you get approval, if you speak with your doctor and you both agree you're ready to try and go back, try to go back. That's the key thing, try. Sometimes these trials are not successful. And again, we can help with that if they're not successful and you're denied. But you have to make sure that you give yourself enough time to rest and to be able to go back when you are ready. In the meantime, we will deal with the insurance company on your behalf.
Take a short break here. When we come back, the relationship between mental illness and LTD. We'll get to that and the phone number. Anytime, 1-855-821-5900. And that email address is help@disabilityrights.ca. We'll continue coming right back with more of the Disability Law Show. People think you should go to the government to get severance pay. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Government can only help you get minimum severance, but not everything you're entitled to. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. If your long-term disability claim is denied, should you appeal?
Appeals often fail because insurance companies control the process. So long as you appeal, you're playing by their rules.
You should never appeal the denial of your disability benefits. Appeals are just a mirage of false hope.
Don't. That's their process. Take it out of their hands and fight for your rights with our help.
Go to disabilityrights.ca. Discover your rights, fight back, and get what you're owed. People think their employer can make changes to their job. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Your employer can't change your pay, hours, or duties. You may be entitled to full severance pay. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Welcome back. You are watching the Disability Law Show here. John Scholes, I'm your host. Along with me, James Fireman, Sivan Tumarkin. Reach out to the fellas anytime. 1-855-821-5900. Help at disabilityrights.ca, or Sivan mentioned just prior to the break. Short, concise, easy to digest memos, non-legalese language, ltdfaq.ca. Use that. It's free and anonymous, of course. Okay, mental illness and the relationship between that and LTD. First point, James, mental illnesses can be considered disabilities if they prevent an individual from being able to perform the basic tasks of their job, yeah?
Sounds pretty familiar. It sounds
Yeah.
like exactly the same test when we're talking about a physical disability,
Right.
and that's because it is. That's a common misconception. People think that if you have a mental disability, a mental health issue, that all of a sudden the test is somehow different or it's harder. It's not. Now, that doesn't mean it's applied fairly or evenly. We have seen many, many times where insurance companies are really inappropriately skeptical about mental health claims in a way that recalls how people used to feel about mental illness 15, 20, 30 years ago. And it is very different. We, as a society, we understand that mental health issues are very serious. They have an enormous impact on people's ability to function in their day-to-day lives, certainly in their ability to function at work. And this is something that if you have, you should reach out to get help, not just from a medical perspective, but from your insurance company, because those are benefits that you're paying for and you're absolutely entitled to them. And so if you have a disability, whether it is physical or mental health, and it's preventing you from being able to do the essential tasks of your own occupation, you're entitled to benefits. If you have support from your family doctor, if you have a psychiatrist or a treatment provider, a therapist that's telling you that you are not okay to go to work, you're not medically able to go to work because of a mental health issue, then you're entitled to the benefits, full stop.
Point number 2, Sivan, is this: individuals struggling with a mental illness should seek treatment and follow recommendations from the doctors.
We talk about this quite often, about the fact that you have an obligation, both at what's called common law, which is just the legal system that we have here that's based on precedent, as well as contractually under the policy to seek reasonable treatments. Now that means going to your doctor, perhaps getting a referral to someone that can help you, be it a psychologist, a psychiatrist, depending on what the illness is. If you're dealing with obviously a mental illness, disability, you need a specialist to help you. Now sometimes I can tell you that doctors don't necessarily offer to do that. They may not necessarily tell you, I'm going to refer you to someone. So if that doesn't happen, ask for it. Keep in mind, by the way, I mean, since COVID, and even before, but especially since COVID, you can get a lot of these treatments virtually. And so you don't necessarily have to have somebody that's next door to you or in the same city that you are at in order to get those kinds of treatments. But if you don't get these treatments, the insurance company can come back at some point and say you are in breach of the policy because you're not undergoing reasonable treatments, or the insurance company can simply say that they're just not going to pay you for the duration when you're not getting those kinds of treatments. So again, very, very important to understand, from a legal perspective, you need to get those treatments. You need to communicate with your doctor or doctors about the nature of your disability and what it is that you can do to get better. You have an obligation to do so. And I guess the last thing that I want to say here is that from a medical perspective, we're not doctors, but doesn't it make sense for you to try and seek treatments? If I'm an insurance company and I see someone who says that they're suffering from something, whether it's a mental illness or whether it's even a physical one, if the person is not seeking treatments, you become skeptical of the extent of or the severity of that illness or the injury or the disability. So, see it from the insurance company's perspective. You're saying you're depressed, you're anxious, but you're not seeking help. Why is that? Yeah. I mean, there may be a reason for that, but my point is there will be that skepticism, and you want to avoid that. Otherwise, you're going to get your file flagged, and you don't want to do that.
What we're talking about is what you need to know about mental illness and LTD. I'll throw the final point to you, James. Insurance companies may incorrectly deny an LTD claim for mental illness due to insufficient medical evidence. We love that one.
Yeah, so I see this in 3 different types of claims for mental health illness. So one of them is where there legitimately just is insufficient medical evidence. Doesn't mean every time the insurance company says it that they're wrong. A lot of the times they are. But sometimes we get calls from people who just have provided virtually no support, no medical support. There's nothing in their family doctor's records. They're just saying it. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but it means that they still have a longer path to go before they're going to get there. So if that's you, and this is going to what Sivan was just talking about, if you haven't gone through the treatment path and you haven't talked to your doctor about it, gotten referrals, then you need to do that. Now, another category are people who have started down that road but are not able to get the treatment that they need because of a lack of resources. And that is really a huge issue almost everywhere in the country, and it's worse when you get to rural areas. We've talked about this on this show in the past, and it is an enormous issue. And so what do you do if you're in that situation? If you have a mental health issue and you've gone to your doctor, your family doctor, and your doctor said, well, you really need to get treatment, and you live in a town where there is no psychotherapist, there are no counselors available, where getting a psychiatrist is going to take you years and a very long drive. What do you do in that scenario? Well, one, get the referral to the psychiatrist anyway. It may take a while, but at the very least it's noted in the file that you've got the referral, so the insurer can't say that you're not doing that. Number two, try and get treatment any way that you can. It may mean that you have to rely on resources that are online. Is that going to be as effective? Probably not, but it is better than nothing, and it shows that you are doing whatever you reasonably can to get that treatment. And if you've done that, and your family doctor is saying that you are disabled from work and the insurance company is denying, even though you are doing everything you reasonably can, then you've got a very good case to fight. Now, the third is when they use this insufficient medical evidence as sort of a catch-all. And usually we see that in situations where there is clear medical evidence, where you have gotten an opinion, not just from your family doctor, but from a psychiatrist, from a psychotherapist, and they're all saying that you can't work. And they use this phrase, insufficient medical evidence, as just a vague way of denying your claim. And when they do that, it's usually someone who is working under the old model, someone who is very skeptical about any mental health claims, but is smart enough not to use the phrase lack of objective medical evidence, because they know as soon as they use that, they're going to get in hot water. So they use this phrase, insufficient medical evidence. Just because they're writing it doesn't mean it's true. If you have the support from your doctors and they say that you're not able to return to work, means you can't return to work and your insurance company is wrong. Give us a call. We can help.
Viewer email is coming up after a short break, and maybe yours, so stick around for that. How do you reach out? help@disabilityrights.ca, and always use the phone number, 1-855-821-5900. Lots more coming up. Stick around. People think contractors aren't owed severance. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Many contractors are actually employees and are entitled to full severance pay. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. How do you force insurance companies to pay long-term disability claims?
Insurance companies deny legitimate claims all the time. They're playing the odds. They know that most people are just going to walk away.
Your insurer may ignore you, they may even ignore your doctors, but they can't ignore us.
We know how insurance companies work. We know their weaknesses. We know how to use the legal process to force them to pay you what you're owed.
Go to disabilityrights.ca. Discover your rights, fight back, and get what you're owed. People think you are only owed 2 weeks' pay when you lose your job. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. You may be owed much more than 2 weeks per year. Don't settle for less. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Welcome back, Disability Law Show. I want to thank you in advance if you've sent an email along and it appears on a show. Continue to do it after the show, of course. help@disabilityrights.ca, or simply call the guys, and a member of the team will always be willing to talk to you and have a chat. 1-855-821-5900. But guys, here's our email for this part anyway. Darren says, I've been on LTD for almost a year. While awaiting surgery on my shoulder, I've heard from coworkers that the company will likely be sold soon as the owner is retiring, and that we'll all get 2 weeks' pay. If I lose my job, what does that mean? My benefits will end?
It's interesting, John. I actually got several questions like this sent to me this week from different places across the country. The answer is unequivocally no. You will not lose your LTD benefits. And the reason is very simple. Once you're on LTD and the insurance company is already paying you, the only way really that you can have your LTD payments stopped is if you reach whatever that age where the policy stops paying. Usually it's age 65, but not always, but usually. Or if you're in breach of a term of the policy, you're not doing something you're supposed to, or if you are no longer disabled, right? If you're no longer disabled, you don't get money.
Yep.
But if your employer is the one that is going out of business or is changing hands or something happens, it doesn't impact your LTD. In as much as we're dealing with your entitlement to LTD, here's where it does potentially impact you. So Darren says here that he may be getting 2 weeks pay, leaving aside the fact that, of course, our employment lawyers, Lior and the rest of the crew, are going to tell you you're going to be owed a lot more. Yeah. Most LTD policies contain provisions that entitle the insurance company to a credit, or they're able essentially to deduct whatever severance you are entitled to from what they have to pay you. And so it does actually factor in, it does matter if you're in receipt of severance or any form of income, because it means that that may lessen what your insurance company will pay you for a certain period of time. And there are strategies and techniques that we can employ to try and lessen that and deal with that. Every case is specific, so we can't go into too many generalities here, but I can tell you that it will have an impact on your LTD, not in terms of whether you're entitled to it, but in terms of whether or not the insurance company is going to continue paying you what they've been paying you all along and throughout.
What's your take, James?
Well, I actually want to go back to this scenario and think about changing it ever so slightly. I think Sivan's answered Darren's question perfectly. But let's say that we're talking about someone who is in a similar situation, who goes on medical leave and is waiting through that elimination period. After you make your application for disability benefits for LTD, there's typically a 4 or 6 month waiting period. Sometimes they call it the elimination period. Means the same thing. It's just a period of time where you have to be continuously disabled after you start your leave before your benefits will start. And so what happens if you're let go or your company goes out of business or whatever during that period of time? It's the same thing. The answer remains the same, even though you actually haven't started getting your benefits yet. The moment you go on medical leave, your claim crystallizes at that point. If you have coverage for disability benefits on the day that you start your medical leave, then even if you are let go and you lose your coverage before the benefits actually start paying out, you're still entitled to your benefits. So if I go on leave today and I have to wait 6 months from now before my benefits start, and 2 months from now my employer goes out of business, I'm still entitled to my disability benefits to start 6 months from now, as long as I can show I've been continuously disabled throughout. That doesn't change.
I guess it makes sense because it's not the employer who's retiring in this case who's paying for them. It's a completely different company. So as long as you're in there, right?
Yeah.
But that raises an interesting point. We do have situations where it's the employer that's actually paying the long-term disability. We see that with banks, for example. A lot of them are actually, they may employ an insurance company to adjudicate the claim because they're not insurance companies. They have no idea if you fit the term of the policy, you meet the test, etc. So that could complicate things. But generally speaking, that's more rare in a situation like that. If it does happen, it could impact your LTD. If the company goes out of business and they're the ones paying you, then we have to get in there fairly quickly and see if we can do anything, but it could be a problem. It doesn't apply across the board. It's not something that we see often. Generally speaking, the insurance company is the one that's paying you, and if in fact you are entitled, you've been qualified, or you're waiting to be qualified for LTD, you're already within that system. It's not something that should be impacting you as to whether or not your employer is in business or not, or it's the same owners.
And again, as you touched on, the other half of what you guys do is the employment side, so you got it all covered, right?
That's right. Anybody has any questions about either side, they should be coming to us and asking those questions.
Appreciate you tuning in for this week, and we'll wrap it up there. We'll be back again next week. In the meantime, keep sending those emails, keep making those phone calls. It's help@disabilityrights.ca, and that phone number 1-855-821-5900, and simply disabilityrights.ca, the firm website. There you can find past shows and links to our long-running radio shows as well, which you can also contribute to and call in every week. And we'll catch you next time right here on the Disability Law Show.